自由と権利が欲しくないか、ホーエンハイム。人間としての権利を手に入れないまま奴隷で一生を終わる気か。それでは息苦しいフラスコの中にいるのと同じだ。
Oh my god! I just got chills.
なぜだ。なぜ亀を手に入れた私がたかが人間の錬金術師に素手で。賢者の一位。
Oh. Oh.
巻き込まれると話せ。断る。俺が皇帝になるためにお前には言ってもらわなきゃならないんだ。無理だ。俺様はもともと親父殿から生まれてんだ。やばい。体が。
He's gonna do something so Ling doesn't get pulled in.
世界の王からかなりランクは下がるが真の皇帝も悪くねえか。一緒に戦うぜ。そうこなくちゃ。何を。ここでさよならだ。騙し討ちみたいなことをして。
No, hold on.
お前は嘘をつかないのを慎重にしてたんじゃないのか。こんな終わり方。まんまと騙されやがって正面撃が。
Come on.
俺様の最初で最後の嘘よ。ランファンが賢者の石を持ってる。それ持って帰りな、ガキ。来い、ランファン。だよ。グレード。グレード。
Wow, look at this.
グレード。なぜ土に逆らう。遅めの反抗期だよ、親父殿。消えよ、愚か者。グレード。くそ、ここまでかよ。
But you've done good. Ah, look at this.
なんて目で見やがる。仲間ってのは魂で繋がってるんだよ。忘れるわけないだろうが。仲間にならねえか。リンもチリもずいぶんなめた態度取ってくれたもんだ。
Look at this. How about that green?
十分だ。
Ha.
もう十分だ。
Chills.
何にもいらねえや。じゃあな、魂の友よ。
Oh my god.
なんだ。
Is he being summoned?
場所に帰れ。フラスコの中の小人をホナン殺せ。
なぜだ。なぜ私のものにならぬ。神よ、何が気に入らないのだ。お前が己を信じないからだ。他人の力を盗み、人から生まれたもののくせに神とやらにしがみついていただけだ。お前自身が成長しておらん。7つの欲を切り離せば人を超えられるとでも思ったか。この世の全てを知りたかった。欲して何が悪い。望んで何が悪い。願い求めて何が悪い。何だって言うんだ。何様のつもりだお前は。私はお前たちが世界と呼ぶ存在、あるいは宇宙、あるいは神、あるいは真理、あるいは善、あるいは一。そして私はお前だ。思い上がらぬよう正しい絶望を与えるのが真理。
人間が思い上がらぬよう正しい絶望を与える。それが真理だ。
だから お前にも絶望を与えよう。戻りたくない。やだ。やめろ。そこに縛られ続けるのは嫌だ。嫌だ。思い上がったものに絶望を。どうすればよかったのだ。
Wow, that's
お前はその答えを見ていただろうに。
エド、通行料ならある。使え、賢者の石だ。これであるを取り戻せ。ダメだ。俺たちが元の体に戻るのに賢者の石は使わないとあると約束した。考えるんだ。思考を止めるな。
You'll figure it out.
エドワード、俺の命を使ってアルフォンスを取り戻せ。ちょうど一人分残ってる。
バカ野郎、そんなことできるわけないだろ。大体なんでてめえが命かける必要がある。
父親だからだよ。必要とか理屈とかじゃない。お前たちが大事なんだ。幸せになってほしいんだ。お前たちの体がそうなってしまったのはほったらかしにしてきた俺にも責任がある。すまなかった。もう十分生きた。最後くらい父親らしいことをさせてくれ。
バカ言ってんじゃねえよ、クソ親父。二度とそんなこと言うな。ハッタオスだ。
It's not gonna let you do that. That must mean so much to
す
him.
まないエドワード。
ねえ、アルのためにそんなに泣いてくれるのか。ザンパのコリさん、ブリックスのみんな、少佐、ランファン、先生、親父。ちょっと行ってくるわ。鋼の錬金術師、最後の錬成にな。
Whoa.
エド
Full Metal Alchemist.
弟を連れ戻しに来たか。代価ならここにあるだろう。でけえのがよ。こいつは俺の真理の扉だ。ってことはどう使おうが俺の自由だ。違うか。
Oh. Wow, look at him.
しかしいいのか。真理の扉を失えば二度と錬金術を使えなくなるぞ。
Ah, yeah.
そうだな。
That's, yeah, he's implying that.
錬金術で全てを解決できると思い込んだ。だけどそれは間違いだった。ただの傲慢だ。錬金術の使えないただの人間になり下がるのか。
It's not how he
なり
looks
下
at
が
it.
るも何も最初からただの人間だ。キメラにされた女の子一人助けられないちっぽけな人間だ。いいんだな本当に。それがなくても。エド、
鋼の
エドワード君。
エドワード・エロニック。
エド、
エド。
He's got
錬
them.
金術がなくてもみんながいるって正解だ。錬金術師。
Oh my
お前は
god.
俺に勝った。
Oh my god.
勝手口はあっちだ。エドワード・エルリック。
Wow. Wow.
無茶しやがって。
兄さんこそ。
Yeah.
さあ帰ろう一緒に。
Wow. Wow.
ザンパノさん、ダリウスさん、みんな。
Why not?
父さ
よう、おかえり。
ん。うん。ただいま。あったかい。辛いことさせちゃったね。ありがとう、メイ。
Yeah, he sees that there's so many people that care about his children. Wow. Can't believe it's at this point now. Oh. Back as a lead.
病院に無事収容しましたぞ。ありがとう。感謝します。いえ、感謝するのはこちらの方です。エドワード・エルリックとアルフォンス・エルリック。あの二人の少年がいなければ、この国が滅んでいました。ありがとうございます。
Yeah. That's right, man.
ありがとう。
He deserves that, man. He deserves that so much. I can't speak right now.
ただいま、トリシャ。エドワードが親父って呼んでくれたんだ。クソがついてたんだけどな。人より長く生き続けるなんてしんどいことばかりだと思ってた。だけど君は息子たちに会えて生きててよかったと心から思えるようになった。充実した人生だった。そうさ、十分だ。
Now you get to rest.
ありがとう、トリシャ。でもやっぱり死にたくねえって思っちゃうな。
Human nature.
それってしょうがねえな。
ホーエンハイム、なんだい、帰ってたのかい。バカタレがなんて幸せそうな顔して死んでんだい。
やっと見つけた新しい朝は月日が邪魔をする。向かい先は
Love that. Love that for him. Life and Times of Hohenheim. Legend. Wow. 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 Oh my god, that was... Yeah, I'm just so happy right now. I mean, of course, incredibly sad. You know, I'm really choked up. But yeah, that was fulfilling. It really was. Yeah, let me go clean up and then let's kind of get into this. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so, you know, I'm actually coming back to this the next day, and I really do feel that some of the most incredible moments of the anime altogether are present in this episode. You know, I've been saying this throughout the last stretch of this anime, essentially. Pretty much every single episode, you know, 5-6 episodes running at this point. It's one of the best episodes of the series. I mean, yeah, it's pretty clear that it's actually a contender for the best episode of the series altogether, right? I could totally see this being people's favorite, right? It's that type of episode that it could be. But you know, these incredible moments kind of come through in the conclusion to some of these incredible character arcs I just mentioned. You know, you have Greed, the conclusion to his arc. Hohenheim, oh my goodness. You know, a beautiful resolution or climax, actually. The resolution is going to come perhaps in the next episode. But the climax to Ed's incredible character arc is just, oh my goodness, it's just beautiful, isn't it? Right? The really memorable and impactful ending to the Dwarf in the Flask's character arc. You know what? Listen, you know, it might have come through in the reaction, but as I sat there, once again, I felt pity. I felt pity for the dwarf in the flask at that moment, as the dwarf in the flask is condemned by his own words, right? And that moment, as he recognizes those words, right? That look on its face, and of course, there's a quick flashback for the audience. Maybe the audience that might not have remembered that indeed it was the dwarf in the flask or father that said that exact same thing to humans, right? As he believed to be above humans, right? And then, of course, that's a major implication here, or a major talking point here, right? This disregard for humanity, right? This arrogance, this entitlement. And it kind of dawns on him, or it, that, yeah, he's about to pay the price. It's quite the price, isn't it? As, he's bound and kind of, dragged, kicking and screaming, unable to ever seek freedom again, right? That's one of the moments I did have pity, right? And, it's a type of pity that you kind of get from, unfulfilled potential even, right? The disappointment I mentioned. There was so much potential there, so much potential, right? Yet there was just minimal growth, if any. I mean, there was no growth, realistically, right? You're looking at two really great examples of a flat arc, though it's more of a modified flat arc, because, a lot of times in a flat arc, that character who happens to be going through a flat arc is actually quite helpful, throughout a story. Is helpful to the protagonist, is helpful to other characters, within that story. They don't really change themselves, and I'm speaking of the characters that go through a flat arc, because they've already had that change. They've had their positive or negative change arc, right? Most likely a positive change arc, and that's the reason I call it a bit of a modified flat arc, because here, you see that there's no change, there's no growth. The dwarf in the flask begins and ends in the exact same place. Exact same place. And, you can't help but feel, I don't know. Even now, I kind of find it a little bit difficult to explain my thoughts, I'm not saying that, I'm feeling really, really sorry for the dwarf in the flask. Yes, there's pity. But it's all that potential. The things that could have been. The thing he could have become. It's just all of that, right? And, and I'm guessing the truth kind of feels the same thing as well. Looking at this figure, right? Again, like I mentioned, dresses it down for everything it's done since freeing itself from the dwarf. Sorry, not from the dwarf, from the flask. Yet taking in nothing, right? I mean, the dwarf in the flask took a lot, right? It took everything. Human life, used it. It took knowledge, everything. It took everything that it could. The key difference being, it didn't gain anything, right? It just took. It took and it took. And I think, it appears that it's even kind of reflected in the gate, or on the gate, right? In the sense that there is nothing there. I've got to say, that scene, the dwarf in the flask facing the truth, might be one of the best scenes of the entire show, of the entire anime, of this story. I think it is. I really do believe it is. It's one of my favorites, for sure. But, that's the flat arc being depicted. The contrast here is just beautiful. Arakawa has just utilized the two different meetings to perfection. You've got the flat arc of the dwarf in the flask, right? Contrasted by Ed and his phenomenal positive change arc, right? Remember all that time ago, I remember saying, I hope he gets to come back. I hope he gets to face the truth again, because I believed then that this young man is going to go on a journey, that he is going to go and have these experiences. Some of them quite harsh, some of them quite difficult. But I believe then and there, you know, again, call it experience, I suppose, because of repetition, because of just the immense amount of storytelling I've consumed, and I'm sure many of you can relate. You just know, right? Sometimes you just know. Down the line, it could be a totally different thing. So for that reason, I was just like, please let him come back. Please let him face the truth one more time. Now, yes, he comes back, right? As they exit Gluttony's portal, failed portal of truth and all that. He comes back. But, you know, I meant this type of meeting, a one-on-one. Him and the truth, right? And, you know, I've got to say, the truth, the truth is such a fascinating character. Again, one of the standouts of the show, right? Beyond this main cast, it's almost, you know, it's this really incredible cameo appearance every now and then that is just so impactful, right? There is just something so attractive about that type of character to me. And, you know, even the visual storytelling is so fantastic here. You see, he's framed in a manner that showcases that growth, right? The camera is kind of looking up at him at times, right? He's filling up the frame, right? Of course, physically, he has grown, right? He's at this growth spurt. But, you know, it's not that oppressive, you know, camera looking down framing this time. You know, the first time he was there, again, as not even a young adult, he was a child at that point. But here you see in the climax of this character arc, right? And usually it is through a decisive confrontation, right? And it's there, right? It's kind of textbook. There is that decisive confrontation, the truth and Ed. And yeah, you know, you just see the growth, right? It feels like this incredible journey I've been on. And that's one of the reasons I really like a long series, right? Because you really truly feel that you've kind of lived that journey. You've been there every step. But yeah, you see that all of that trauma and all of the heartaches, it's all been worth it. It's all been worth it. As he is clearly, most definitely a better person. He has grown so much, right? I feel like us audience can feel just like Hohenheim in this moment. You know, I think one of the best moments of this entire series came in this episode as well. You know, Hohenheim getting to see the incredible young men his sons ended up being, grew into. Oh my goodness, I was so happy for Hohenheim. You know, I said that he really deserves this as I was really struggling to speak at that one moment. But yeah, he truly deserved that. You know, as you know, I've been a big Hohenheim fan since day one. I've been intrigued by his really unique situation since day one. I've always believed that, okay, of course, there's got to be more to it. It is just a perfect send-off for Hohenheim. It is so beautifully wrapped up. I mean, hell, it even looked like Trisha kind of, you know, again, it's more, I'm not saying, you know, she physically comes down to get him, but there is a beautiful moment there. Yes, it does feel like more of a spiritual moment. There's a quick scene of Trisha, right? You know, kind of leaning in. Beautiful lighting behind her, right? The skies, the golden sky behind her as she kind of reaches down from the heavens. That was a beautiful touch. I've got to say, that was a beautiful touch. You know, she came to get the love of her life, to take him, right? On to the next life. Yeah, you know, I couldn't have asked for anything else. Hohenheim just kind of deserved all of that. You know, he died happy, a beautiful smile on his face, right? His old drinking buddy saw him as well. So I love that she gets to see that he's finally at rest. He finally gets to move on. And he was happy. He was at peace in his final moments, much like how Greed was content, satiated, and at peace at the end. I mean, I'll get to Greed and his conclusion. It is, again, another beautiful conclusion, isn't it? Now, you know, a lot of this sounds like happy endings, right? Because yes, they are happy endings. Listen, I'm not the type of storytelling enthusiast that just needs everything to be a happy ending. No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, some of the best endings can come in many forms. A tragic ending could be a good ending. A cliffhanger ending. It's a tough one to pull off, but if you pull it off, it can be a good ending. That one's really, that one's really not the type you see a lot, but it can be done. It can be done. A unique ending, an open-ended ending. I'm all for it. I'm all for it, right? It all kind of depends on the story itself, right? It's a case-by-case situation. But here, I think it fits. I really do think it fits here. I mean, you could go on and on about how certain endings are handled, right? And a lot of times, endings are, I don't know, you're never, ever going to really satisfy every single person, right? There's always going to be people that are not into an ending. You're always going to get people that are not satisfied, right? You simply cannot satisfy everyone. It's not possible, right? Even if the majority thinks it's an incredible ending to something, you're always going to have some people that just, it didn't really do it for them. I've got my own, opinions on certain celebrated endings. I've got my thoughts on the Breaking Bad ending, the final episode itself. Now is not the time to really go into it, but there's that idea sometimes that maybe it was played too safe, right? And I'm speaking of just endings in general, right? That's one of the talking points that kind of comes out of this, right? Oh, they played it too safe. Oh, this is too open-ended. I didn't get enough answers, right? You're always going to have that, always, right? Another ending that I've been hearing about for some time now, the Shingeki ending, right? Really mixed. It's a really mixed bag, isn't it? I mean, that, I am excited to get to that ending because I've been hearing about this for so long, right? And listen, there's people that I really respect, whose opinions I really respect, that didn't really quite like the ending. So that actually makes it even more intriguing because clearly there is something there. There is something there, right? But I don't want to deviate too much. Let's kind of stick to this anime. But yeah, I think in this case, these happy endings to these character arcs, to many of these character arcs, make sense. They do, right? They do. But yeah, Hohenheim, at the end of the day, this curse of immortality, yeah, he felt that, yeah, at the end of the day, it was worth it. Hell, he actually wanted to live on now, right? He's seen his children, again, they grew into such amazing young men. And, Armstrong telling Hohenheim about his sons and their crucial role in saving this country. Yeah, it's another moment that broke me. And it broke Hohenheim as well, right? And he's just so proud in that moment, right? There's a lot of moments that are really fulfilling for Hohenheim. And for that reason, he was at ease and at peace as he goes to see the love of his life, right? As he goes to join her, Trisha. He was content in that moment, right? There was only one thing left to do, join her again. Before passing on, he gets to see all of the connections that his sons have made, all the people that care for his sons. The bonds, the bonds are strong in this one, folks. You really see it on display. I've been talking about the bonds that have been created throughout the journey, this incredible journey that the Elric brothers have been on. And Hohenheim gets to see that. He gets to see that there's so much for his sons. They've created something special for themselves, and they'll be fine. They'll be just fine, right? Even though you see, there is that urge to live on, right? Now that he has kind of seen his sons flourish, right? And that he is in their lives. And the fact that he gets to see Alphonse back in his body, in his human body. And again, one of the most beautiful moments, Alphonse getting to feel or experience that sensation of touch from a loved one, right? Hohenheim and Alphonse meeting hands, feeling that warmth once again. It's all around him. He's surrounded by it, right? All those people that that are in his life, that care for him. For him to come back out and to see this, to be surrounded by such warmth is just beautiful, isn't it? Right? But I love that moment, his hand and Hohenheim's hand coming together. Oh my goodness, beautiful. It really is. But going back to the two different experiences in front of the truth, right? The dwarf in the flask and the truth, and Ed and the truth. Yeah, you really get to see the growth, right? It's such a proud moment to see Ed really truly understand the things that matter. I mean, it didn't happen all of a sudden, but to present all of that to the truth, and to have the truth actually be so happy to be not wrong, but to be defeated, to be bested, right? And even baffled at one point, right? Because he initially tells him, that's my price right there, my gate of truth. Baffled, right? You do not see the truth like that. You just don't. So that in itself is this incredible moment, right? That he came to that conclusion. And, the thing I love there is that Hohenheim understands right before Ed disappears, right? Right before he tells them all, or this is after he actually tells them all, this is the final transmutation, from the Full Metal Alchemist. At first, he's a little bit shocked, but then he it clicks. He clocks it. He's going to give up his alchemy. He's going to give up. And you see that he's proud in that moment. Just that quick smile, you can just tell. He's just proud that Ed, his son, came to that conclusion, right? And also, another really beautiful and emotional moment is him getting to see that Ed does not want to lose him, right? It's quite the emotional moment for Ed, because you really don't get to see Ed that emotional, crying, right? Openly. And this time it's at the notion of possibly losing Hohenheim, right? He called him father, right? For the first time, he called him father. I mean, sure, there's another term attached to it, but, father, he called him father nonetheless. And then also, later on, as he's thinking of all the connections he's made, all the people that care for him, for the people that matter, for the things that matter beyond alchemy, right? He calls him old man as well. The old man is just one of those terms of endearment. So love that, just love that, right? And you see that Hohenheim understands as well almost immediately, and it means so much to him. He gets emotional to see Ed react in that manner, right, to his proposal. Of course, as expected, he does not hesitate. He tells him, use me. There's just enough left for one life, right? Use me. I'm at the end of the line. At first, Ed kind of takes this practical approach. It was our fault. Us brothers did this, created this issue, this problem for ourselves. You shouldn't have to do that. No one should have to do any of this. No one should have to sacrifice anything for us, for our mistake, right? He's looking at it from a practical sense. But Hohenheim's response to Ed, his really reason-based response, right, grounded in logic and reason, is one of, it's because I'm your father. It's simple as that. It transcends reason, right? It is because I'm your father, right? There's no need to look at the practicality of any of this, and that really gets Ed, doesn't it? At that moment, you truly get to see that something really changed at that moment. That now he truly feels that this man cares for us. He does care for us. Sure, there's signs of that leading up to this moment, small signs, small moments. You see that Ed has changed his outlook, his opinion of Hohenheim quite a bit, but that right there is the most drastic display, or the most drastic display of the shift within Ed, right? And you see it on his face as well. And of course, he gets emotional a little bit after that, right? At the notion of potentially losing someone he just recently found again, right? A loved one that he recently kind of connected with again, right? I mean, yes, of course it wasn't perfect, but they connected nonetheless. So I thought that was a great moment, beautiful moment for both Ed and Hohenheim in that relationship. I mean, it's really a fantastic moment, right? To see Ed kind of reflect on all of his experiences, the ups and downs, accepting that, yes, sure, you know, it can be the solution to some of these major problems, but also the cause of some of these problems as well at the same time. You know, this is an individual that believed, you know, once upon a time, that alchemists are the closest thing to gods on Earth that they have on Earth, and closest things to a god type figure that they have, right? Look at him now. Look at him now, right? I mean, you know, the humility here on display here is just incredible, isn't it? You know, that's the key difference here. That is the key difference. Growth, humanity, humility. You're not seeing any of that in the other meeting that happened, right? Now, speaking of the dwarf and the flask and the truth, there's just nothing there. There's no growth at all there. You know, ultimately, like I said earlier, the dwarf just took and took. It didn't acquire or gain knowledge. It just took it. It took power. It took all of it. But then you see, you know, in the lead up to Ed kind of coming back here, that he didn't take that route, right? He acquired knowledge. He gained it rather than taking it. Again, you know, a lot of ups and downs on this journey, for the better. I think for the better, of course, and much needed ups and downs, of course, and ultimately, you know, the dwarf and the flask used people for the power, right, or gave up people for the power, and then on this side you have Ed, who gave up power for the people. Right? In this case, you know, specifically for his brother Alphonse, right? And then just having this incredible new outlook on life, his role in life, his place in life, his place in this all is one, one is all mantra. He is just so accepting in that moment, right? He's at ease, he's at peace. And you know, he understands that there's more to life than just alchemy. There's much more out there than alchemy, right? And he sees it. You know, they kind of make it a point to once again kind of flash all of these prominent figures in his journey, from his journey, people that have made a major impact. As long as I have them, who needs alchemy? And if you compare the two meetings, you really see something that sticks out at you, doesn't it? If you look at the dwarf and the flask and his meeting with the truth, there is a serious lack of wisdom. The dwarf and the flask gained nothing. He did not, or it did not acquire wisdom, right? And to acquire wisdom is to change, right? Because a part of you changes forever. That's just how it is, right? You're not the same person once you do have that wisdom, right? There's a before and after. I mean, it has a price. It just does, because a part of you changes forever. Like I said, there's a before and after. And you see that on display, right? You see that on display in the second meeting. Oh my goodness, it's just beautiful, isn't it? To see Ed kind of come to that conclusion. Yeah, it's just something the dwarf and the flask could not acquire. You know, that pursuit towards self-actualization, right? The dwarf and the flask didn't even take that chance, right? Didn't even go out there, didn't put himself out there, didn't try to acquire knowledge. I mean, it certainly wanted knowledge. So did Ed, you know, the pursuit of knowledge, but the path deviates. And, you know, a moment that kind of really stood out to me is, again, as the dwarf in the flask is being dragged, again, kicking and screaming into the abyss, to be bound forever, to never have a chance at freedom ever again. Again, the worst possible punishment, right? Of course, the truth has this sense of irony in its punishments, doesn't it? But yeah, it's asking the truth. How else could he have done this or approached this, right? And as the gate shuts, the truth said something along the lines of, you must have seen it with your own eyes, right? And of course that could mean a few different things, but I think one of the things the truth might have suggested is the fact that these desires, as he referred to it as desires, didn't he? The sins, that is, you must have seen it through their eyes, right? I think that's one thing that's being suggested here. There's many things you can kind of get out of that, and us, the audience, really got to see things through their eyes. And I'm speaking of the sins, right? Like I said, experiencing the character arcs of the sins really kind of tells you so much about Father, because that is Father. That is the dwarf in the flask, and how he truly feels about everything. And also, before I forget, I kind of want to touch up on the relationship that the dwarf in the flask and Hohenheim shared. Right? There is something really quite fascinating there, and there has been since I saw that incredible backstory flashback episode as well. You see that Hohenheim. Yeah, you see that there is a little bit of sadness there, right? In the final moments, as Father, or the dwarf in the flask, is being dragged back into to face the truth. And then later, before Armstrong comes up on him and kind of thanks him for his incredible sons and the part they had to play in all of this, he's standing there contemplating their relationship once again. Listen, yes, the dwarf in the flask had a major impact on Hohenheim. The dwarf in the flask did help Hohenheim think bigger, think beyond his existence as a slave, because at that point, being a slave was the only thing that he was ever expecting to be. He had no notions or ideas of going beyond that, right? So yes, the dwarf in the flask helped him kind of think bigger, right? Think for himself, expand his horizons, right? And then of course, ultimately, the dwarf in the flask comes from Hohenheim, doesn't he? And in that sense, maybe you could even say it is Hohenheim's offspring, his first offspring, kind of, again, taken or kind of made from Hohenheim's blood. So there is some sadness there. And also, finally, let's kind of focus on Greed, right? And Ling, and that really special bond that they end up kind of having, right? It begins with this power struggle to gain access, to be the dominant over that body that is of Ling, right? Ling's body. But by the end of it, they are one and the same, right? By the end of it, it kind of feels like Ling just lost a piece of himself, a piece of his soul, right? It's crazy, isn't it? That by the end of it, Ling is in a struggle to hold on to Greed, someone he truly cares for, right? Again, it's quite the drastic shift, isn't it? And you see that Ling is legitimately just so scared to lose him, so sad to lose him, right? So desperate to hold on, to latch on, right? And Greed, it's just incredible to see, right? No hesitation in the selfless act, just kind of gives himself up and really wants to make sure that Ling doesn't get dragged into this, right? And for the first time and the last time, he tells that lie because he knows it's the only way he can kind of guarantee that Ling is going to kind of let his guard down for a moment or two at least, so he can kind of, bamboozle him. That is how much he cared for Ling, right? But yeah, again, another standout moment. I mentioned there's a lot of amazing moments in this episode, all-timer moments for the series. It's of Ling, of Greed, who ends up becoming quite a crucial component of the final blow, right? It's facilitated by Greed pulling that off, and then of course, soon after, Ed kind of finishes him off. Father, that is, or Dwarf in the Flask, that is, because he uses his ultimate shield, much like how Ed kind of uses back around the time they first come across each other, you know, that conclusion to their fight in Doubleth. As he's beginning to disappear, right, in his final moments, he looks down at the faces of Ling and Ed, the concern on their face, the look on their face. That's it. That's it. That's all he needed. As he stated, that's all I ever needed. That's enough for me, right? And he's thinking of these bonds that he's created, the brotherhood, the soul brothers, the soul friends. It is just the most perfect ending, isn't it, for Greed, right? All of that in itself. And the fact that he thinks this is good, this is enough, that's all I ever wanted, is so remarkable, given the fact that he is Greed. So once again, it kind of continues that ironic ending for the sins, right? Like I mentioned much earlier in the beginning of my review, it's a long one at this point. He was content. He was at ease, at peace. This is it. It's more than enough. And then continuing on that notion of brotherhood, right? Ling, Greed, Ed, and, Alphonse as well, all of them, in friendship altogether. You see that he does not hesitate for a moment, immediately gives up or presents the Philosopher's Stone to Ed. Use this to bring Alphonse back. No hesitation. How crazy is that? How incredible is that, given the fact that his whole journey begins for that one reason, to discover this immortality, or the possibility of immortality, and bring it back. No, that didn't matter in that moment. In that moment, this is the thing that matters most. It's beautiful. It's just perfect. I just love it so much. I really do. Listen, I think I'll end it off here. I do have another episode. I'll probably kind of mix in some thoughts there as well, right? Of course, I'll give my thoughts on the actual final episode, and then, kind of tie it all together. But yeah, in terms of things I kind of need to see or hope to see, expectations, and, like I mentioned a bit earlier, it does kind of begin that epilogue stage, the resolution phase. You see that Selim in that form, in that state, is given to Mrs. Bradley, right? So are they going to touch up on that? Is he going to grow? Is he kind of stuck in that state? They touch up on Roy Mustang and his crew. Here you have the type of story that can easily end up on a point that essentially gives us, the audience, a roadmap for how things could be years, decades down the line, right? It's that type of story, and it's given that type of ending, right? That it can kind of present these scenarios, and I love that. In that sense, it's so rewarding for us, the audience, right? Because it kind of lives on forever in our heads, doesn't it? Right? Giving us that potential roadmap for years and decades to come, right? I mean, these stories live in our minds forever. Anyways, there is Alphonse's notebook and all the tasty things he's wanted to try this whole time. So of course, I hope to see a bit of that. And then of course, there's the other Elric, Ed, who's got the earrings that he's got to return, right? So that feels like the final thing that kind of also needs to be wrapped up, right? It's been there, it's been building up for a long time. So, I'm hoping for something really quite lovely there. Listen, I'll be honest, I have seen a bit of a spoiler from the final episode, I think. It's one of those moments you kind of come across a screen grab or like a frame. Of course, I didn't really linger. I tried to scroll down. It was on Twitter. I tried to scroll out, or just kind of cancel out of the app altogether. But again, a split moment is usually enough to retain at least a solid chunk of the frame. And yes, it was. I hate to say it, folks. Unfortunately, I saw it. Yeah, it was Ed holding. I'm pretty sure it was Ed. It's got to be. It looked just like Ed holding a baby, right? And of course, again, I didn't. The thing I remember is a lot of people in that photo, right? The main thing that stood out to me is Ed holding the baby, right? And of course, all of us know the baby is going to be his baby and Winry's baby together, right? So I saw that. Unfortunately, you know, that's a risk. You know, nothing can really truly be spoiler free, right? In this day and age, no matter how careful you are, you might run into something. You know, even if you keep it airtight, you know, there might be fellow content creators, mutuals that watch certain things that you might not have seen yet. But you know, of course, that moment aside, I'm sure I'll still have much to enjoy about this final episode. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. And you know, at this point, I've just got the 2 episodes, right? This and then the final episode. So it'll be great to kind of dip into the comments a bit quicker than before, right? Now that it's about to end. And if you are interested in that final episode through early access or perhaps full length for this episode or the final episode or any of the past episodes, consider checking out the Patreon page. And indeed, if you are interested, check out the links in the description and the pinned comment. Okay, thank you so much for checking this out, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is, isn't it? And yeah, I'll see you for the final episode. Crazy, huh? Until then, take it easy.